Noel Nathan.
That was a complete win, folks. Second half, Florida State took it to LSU. Final score, Noles 45, LSU Tigers 24 in a big way. Welcome in, everyone. Leave those comments and questions there for Florida State post-game live right here. This is Mark. We are here with George, who's going to be here for each and every post game, and he's on site there in Orlando. And George, you have got to be pumped.
Man, what a game, Mark. We spent so long talking about this. We'll get into all the different details of the game, but we kind of hit on all the big points, all the big talking points from this offseason. We all hit them, and the Noles win big. Man, honestly, in the first half of that game, it looked like the best two teams you've seen in college football, period, thus far. It was a really great game, and then in the second half, like you said, it was all FSU, all Jaheim Bell, Keon Coleman, Jordan Travis. Got the running game going late. It's a great time to be a Florida State Seminole, man.
Yeah, so let me hit you with a few things because it was obviously huge that right out of the gate after LSU hit on that big play with the back leaking out of the backfield and a bit of a blown coverage, nobody picking him up, that despite having that personal foul inside the 5 that gave LSU 4 more shots, that's where the Noles really, in a sense, even though it was a close game, obviously, into the second half, for me, that's where they showed, we're going to control the line of scrimmage. We're going to control the middle. You're not going to be able to run between the tackles on us. And they stopped them 6 times inside the 2.
What a goal line stand, Mark. And that's the thing. In the first half, anybody out there that watched this game, LSU had 0 penalties for 0 yards at the end of the first half, and I believe we had 6 for 63 yards or 58 yards, something like that. Everything was kind of against Florida State in that half. Outside of the muff punt, it was just mistake after mistake after mistake. 3 big drop balls. The play inside letting them get down there on that first drive, like you mentioned. But just the fact that Florida State was able to keep it within 3 with all of that myriad of things going wrong. And, LSU folks will say, well, we had stuff go wrong. We fumbled the punt. But literally, as soon as they muffed that punt, the very next play, Jordan Travis throws a pick and gives it right back to them. They go on to score. So it was going to be.
Made the first big play offensively when he got loose and obviously scored from about 40 or 45 yards out. The place had to be rocking from that big play.
No doubt. Keon was amazing. From that very first play on throughout the game, this place was rocking. I'm talking about nuts. Really, for him to come out in his first game and end up with 3 touchdowns, he had 111 yards going into the fourth quarter. Not sure what exactly he finished with, but the guy, man, he is exactly as advertised. Nobody in LSU secondary could man him up, period. They had a couple different guys that ended up on him all night, and he kept mossing them, Mark. He just kept mossing them. Play after play after play.
Yeah, he did. Johnny Wilson didn't early. He had a lot of drops at one point, just kept dropping passes that would have converted third downs. And so that was shutting down a few drives. I also wondered early on at one point, Jordan Travis came out, and if I don't know what his numbers were in the first quarter plus, but he was throwing the ball extremely well. Aside from those drops, his numbers would have been great. And then he went through a bit of a funk. He, as you mentioned, he threw that pick after the muff punt. It was a tough situation where, they broke the line of scrimmage. They blew up the play, but he shouldn't have forced it. He threw a pick. Trying to get the ball out to the left side. And then the next series, after they got pinned down to the 1, he almost did the same thing, almost threw a pick inside the 10. And I was kind of wondering because Trey Benson, the couple times he touched the ball, gained some good yardage. I wondered where Trey Benson was, and then they came out in the second half and they got him more involved.
There's no doubt. Me and Chris were talking about that a lot in the first half. You know, I don't know if it was nerves or just wanting to do too much, but yeah, he kind of got out of sorts. They mentioned it on the broadcast. It was out of character for him to make those plays. Um, but it's to his credit, he didn't let it, get him down. He shook it right off and came out in the second half and dominated. Malik Neighbors had a great game, but man, what a job those cornerbacks did on him. Really happy with the Florida State secondary and limiting him. One of the biggest things we talked about over and over in this game, could Jaden Daniels get it over those defensive backs' head? Hit those big plays down the field. Now, he had a few drops. Lacey, I believe, had 2 different drops on deep passes that kind of let us off the hook. But for the most part, we kept him in the pocket. He broke out on some big runs. But the defense did what they were supposed to do. You can't be happier or prouder for these guys. With all the talk and all everything surrounding it. Adam Fuller, the whole deal. A lot of people, myself included, I picked this game 38-31. For the Noles to really run away in that second half and put it away, it's just we saw this team take a step mentally that has been in the works for a lot of times. We've talked about those 3 losses we had in the middle of the year last year. This might have been one of those games where they got, beat themselves up, but no, they made the adjustments, came out and stuck to it.
Yeah, you mentioned the Lacey drops. The one that I really think hurt LSU and got this thing rolling for Florida State was LSU led 17-14. They kicked a field goal right before half. They drove the ball down the field. I thought they were going to run out the clock. They got a 3rd and 10, and they had a running play where they had trips left, and they just ran the ball to the right side, and nobody was there, and they went 35 yards, and that set them up for a field goal right before half. But they come out in the second half. FSU gets a field goal. It's 17 all, and then they had a 3rd and 6, and Lacey beat his guy and just dropped the ball. And Florida State gets it back. They move down the field like nothing. Toafili had the big play on 4th and 2 where they leaked him out of the backfield. And after that, after that Lacey drop, and FSU got the ball back and drove it 70, 75 yards. Man, they controlled the game and dominated the game after that.
No doubt. I'm glad that you decided to join us or join me because you're not a Florida State guy. So you're kind of a impartial observer here. What did you think of the officiating in the first half there, Mark? Am I biased, or was that the most egregious non-called holds? Like LSU, to me, there's a billion different things, little things here, but how LSU didn't get a single offensive holding call in that first half is just beyond me. The one play where it was a late hit out of bounds, the guy barely touched him, but it was definitely late. On that play, John Emory Jones, he had that guy, wrapped up. It was like the most egregious hold I've ever seen. And then you flip the script, after Florida State barely touches the guy out of bounds, and they come over there and rough the passer after Jordan slides, and they're like, oh, well, it wasn't that bad a contact. It's like there just wasn't any consistency, it seemed to me. And then you come out in the very first play, LSU gets the ball, they call a penalty finally. It's almost like they decided. Somebody called them at halftime and been like, you guys, y'all got to call a penalty on LSU.
Yeah, I will say, anytime I'm watching a football game, regardless of who I care, I've got no rooting interest. I'm just watching a game. I hate to see flags for personal fouls. I hate to see any kind of flags that don't deal with the actual football, because I hate when teams don't have to earn points. But, that doesn't mean that the official should overlook anything. Those are within the rules, and they obviously have to police the game, and they can't let the game get out of hand. So the first one that was borderline was the one inside the 5-yard line after they made a stop and they pushed Jaden Daniels back and back and back, and the whistle blew, and they did
Mm-hmm.
throw him to the ground late. And I thought, yeah, I guess that call's got to be made, but I hate to see that because they stopped him, and I hate to see just a gift. And that's what it was. Well, they stopped him anyway. And then the next one was, like you said, the one that was the I forget who it was for LSU. Was it Malik Neighbors that had the ball on the right sideline?
Yeah, I
And
think so. It was a wide receiver taking it out.
yeah,
So.
he got clipped out of bounds, and he was way in the white at that point. He barely got clipped. So they call it, but you're right. There was a trailing blocker that was obviously holding. Now the discussion on the network feed on ESPN was basically between Herb Street and the officiating guys, that they bring in to
Mm-hmm.
look at that. And he basically said, I wouldn't have called that. It was behind the play. I didn't think it affected the play. Well, these officials aren't supposed to be judging whether it affects the play or not. They're just supposed to
Exactly.
call it.
That's what we were screaming. Like, what does it matter? It obviously affects the play because if you call it, it's a first down. So, or at
So,
least offsetting penalties. I
yeah,
believe it wouldn't have been offsetting, but
yeah,
they both would have been applied at least.
exactly. They
And
both
just
would
for them to go
apply.
that way on the Jordan Travis slide after making all those calls, that to me was just like, how are you not going to call that roughing when you called
Yeah,
the roughing on us and all those? Like you said, you could call them, but it's just like, how did all the borderline calls were going one way, but it evened out in the second
yeah,
half. And boy, was it fun. That first half was, I mean, you're talking about chewing your nails. It was a heck of a game. That was one of the best halves we've seen all year outside of Colorado and TCU. There was some sloppiness, but super competitive.
oh
Makai
yeah,
Wingo, man, he's a good player for them. He was giving Marty Smith a hard time in the first half, but give Norvell credit. They had answers in the second half for that. And that two back set, Florida State fans are going to really like seeing that two back set with Jaheim Bell back there with either Toa Philly or Benson. Holy moly. George. Looks like Florida State got lucky tonight. Well, my name is George too, but I don't know I don't know how you call 45-24 luck, but
that's just George being George, just showing up as a Gators fan.
that's right,
So
Kareem. One and
no,
one
no,
and oh, baby.
nobody get too riled up by that. That's just George being a Gators fan.
Yeah, well, it was a sea of purple coming out of here when the fourth quarter started. You should have
Yeah,
seen it,
I
Mark.
bet. Yeah.
It went from being about 80-20 to about 95-5 right there pretty quick. Our buddy
Now,
James Coleman let him have it pretty good. It was pretty funny to see his screen.
well, it took me a long time to make a prediction on this game, and I picked wrong. So I picked LSU. But I got to say, once this thing started to open up for Florida State, I thought, well, like you said right off the top, George, you said, this kind of unfolded the way we talked about it. And so I can't say I was surprised. I thought it was going to be a great game, thought it was going to be a close game. It obviously was until mid third quarter, late third quarter was a close game. And then Florida State, they dominated. So I'm slightly surprised, not totally surprised, but where FSU really proved to be the much better team is the LSU secondary just couldn't handle those weapons when it came right down to it. They held and held and held and held for a while and got away with some things. And obviously the Johnny Wilson drop passes. I don't want to harp too much on those, but certainly those killed some drives, and then he made up for it. Obviously, there in the third quarter with a big catch on a one-on-one situation where JT just tossed it up to him, and he did what he does, and that's outfight the defender for the football and out stretch him for the football. But Florida State speed and space, their length, their skill set on the outside against LSU secondary was a mismatch.
No doubt. That was, I mean, anybody could see ahead of the game. That was the biggest. When you look at matchups up and down the roster, that was the big one. That was the one that was like kind of obviously favored our way. You had all those drops in the first half, and then the floodgates opened in the second half. I mean, Keon Coleman, what can you say about a guy to get 3 touchdowns in his premiere like that? it's going to be a fun year to watch that guy. We'll see how many touchdowns he ends up with. He could end up with 15 before it's over with. One of the big parts of this game, and another one of the big things we talked about, is Florida State defensive line versus LSU offensive line. So last year, Jared Verse just abused the freshman, and then their right tackle was a guy who's, I believe, not even no longer with the team. So one of the things a lot of the LSU people really harped on, we had Carter in here, he kind of talked about it. We had a back and forth on it. Well, y'all didn't even see Emory, number 50, the right tackle, and on, and which was true. He ended up playing those last 10 games, goes all SEC freshman. But the thing is, he didn't see Jared Verse or Patrick Payton either. So that position, he was the one that was holding. I felt like, I don't know how many holding calls he actually got. I don't even know if he got one. But to me, it looked like he was holding a lot. And if he wasn't holding, he was getting beat. Verse even beat Will Taylor for that one sack. But, man, that kid, he really has come a long way. Their offensive line was they were playing. Our defensive line just got the better of it. For sure.
George, we've got a couple super chats coming in here. We got Kareem. We appreciate you being here. Kareem, is Keon Coleman, Jaheim Bell our biggest pickups?
Our biggest pickups. It's hard not to argue that Keon Coleman was our biggest pickup, especially on offense. I'm pretty positive. I'm pretty strong in saying I'll give you Keon Coleman. Jaheim Bell is another major addition, but Braden Fisk in the center of that defense. He didn't have a bunch of sacks, but he affected that game, and man, he played good. The offensive line guys we brought in obviously made a difference, but as far as the offense, I will definitely go. I'll agree with you, Kareem, excuse me. Keon Coleman and Jaheim Bell, they were probably our biggest pickups on offense, and what a game they had. Jaheim, I don't know if he had a little nerves going on. He had a drop early as well, I believe. But, man, that second half, when they started running that two-back set, with him back there being able to block or get the ball, he really played well and really opened up that offense.
Kareem coming back with this one.
Keep them coming,
defense
Kareem.
Look like the 2013 FSU defense.
Man, you're talking about some high praise. But when you go back to that year, we started out against Pittsburgh. We didn't start out against an LSU, even an Ole Miss like we ended up doing a couple years later. I'm trying to think of a team we played, because not really till Auburn. I guess Clemson. It's not going to beat that Clemson performance in Death Valley. But I will say it looks like the best defense we've had since 2013. So it's a long season. We got a ways to go, but it's certainly the best one we've had since 2013 and 2014. And you might could make a case for being better than that 24 defense. Even though that 14 defense was just absolutely loaded with NFL talent across the board, they were all kind of 1 foot in NFL. This team is hungry, man. It's hungry, and these guys they're grown. We've got a lot of fourth, fifth, sixth year guys like Dennis Briggs. That guy had a huge game for us. And he's a fifth-year senior and a guy who's just always been right there looking to make that next step. And, wow, he was really, really impactful on the inside as well.
And speaking of the defense and the star of the defense, Jared Verse, and speaking of officiating, there could have been a strip sack there with the Jaden Daniels play that Jared Verse came around the end. And, that was close in terms of trying to make a determination on whether he threw it or not, or had the arm moving forward. And I always hate those, because I think it's kind of like, any of us that know football know what a catch looks like. It's almost the same thing with a fumble. We know what a forward pass looks like, and they've gotten so technical. I saw a play just like this yesterday afternoon during the Ohio State-Indiana game, where it's like, the quarterback's arm is barely moving forward. So he's got a hold of the football, It's barely coming forward. To me, that should be in the rules. I'm not saying the officials screwed it up. I'm just saying it's a bad rule. It should be a fumble.
Absolutely. It's like the NFL did with their catch rule for a couple years. It was insane. Like just have it. This tuck rule came up a long time ago, and they still haven't figured out a way to separate that. And like you said, the on-air referee, he agreed with you and me. He thought it was a fumble, and then bam, they come out and overturn it, call it a forward pass. But yeah, to me, his arm was coming back, and it was all, the contact that pushed it forward. But if you push the arm forward in the track of a throwing motion, I guess, then they're going to call it. Thank you, Tony Yo-Yo. Appreciate you, man.
Just got a sub. Very nice.
Yes, sir.
And
make sure you guys hit that like and subscribe button right here on the Voice of College Football. We'll be with y'all after every game. It won't be so late next time. We'll have a better setup, but it's pretty wild out here in Orlando. So we did our best we could just to get on here.
What was your estimation on how the stadium was split?
Man, it was 90-10 Seminoles. It was unreal. Yeah. It was a home game. It just goes to show you the brand that is Florida State. And, even LSU people, they kind of have SEC, and they'll tell you that LSU is a better program than Florida State. They'll say we're a top 5 program. And, Florida State's not quite there yet. But when we went to New Orleans, it was pretty close to 50-50, if you ask me. So then you flip the script and the same distance away from us, and it's 90-10. These Seminoles, maybe it's just a thing of we're more hungry for a winner, and LSU spoiled because they just had a champion in 2019. But man, these fans and the engagement across the internet, Noel Nation is ready to have a winner, and they got one. Coach Norvell, man, he did some learning on the job. Took him a couple years. We took our lumps early, but he's got this team, firing on all cylinders, and those halftime adjustments. They continue to this is 3 years in a row, in my opinion, that he's out-coached. Brian Kelly, we lost that Notre Dame game in 21, but that team had no business taking that Notre Dame team to overtime, and they end up losing it in overtime. But you get the win last year, and it's our first game. We had freshmen this, we had that. Y'all had a week 0 game, and on. It was Brian Kelly's first time at LSU. I'm curious to see what the storylines are coming after this one, because
I think they've run out of excuses.
No doubt.
Kareem says that the guy was he went
into the bench. The guy he pushed out.
I wish I knew who that was, but anyway, Malik Neighbors. Do you know who the Florida State player was that
yeah, I'm like, I think it was Neighbors, but I'm not sure.
But the Florida State player.
Oh, who was that? The Florida State player. Was it Fintrell Cypress?
Yeah, I don't
Cypress know. And another guy was over there, but they called it on Turner, I think. I think they called it on 54. It was one of them. I'm not really sure. It was kind of a blur at that point. That man, that first half was nerve-wracking. It was, me and Chris talked about that too, man. It was kind of like it seemed whoever took a hold of that momentum first was going to kind of get the game and run away with it. And sure enough, was it Knowles? It might have been Knowles.
I think Kareem is right.
Yeah.
I'm almost certain it was Kevin Knowles. Now that he says that, I remember them showing him.
You're absolutely right. Number 3. That throws me off that he's in number 3 this year. But yeah, I believe it was him. But everybody kind of took their turn, making a dumb play. Verse got called for something, one of those hits, and, I believe maybe it was the quarterback hit, but Mike Norvell jumped them all like he does, coached them up on the sidelines, but nobody hung their head. Everybody, got back out there, and luckily it evened out in the second half.
Folks, if you're not familiar, George runs a site called Renegade Report. It's right here on YouTube, so it's easy to find. As soon as we get done here, just put it in the search bar, or I will give it a look right now, grab the link, put it in the chat. So get on over there and check out George's work covering Florida State. He loves Florida State. He knows what's going on. He knows the team. He's got a interesting perspective on it, or we wouldn't have him here every Wednesday on our live show that we do with James Coleman, Chris Frazier, Logan Robinson. We got a good crew of analysts every Wednesday, 6 o'clock Eastern time. So if you guys are missing that show, you're missing out as well. So subscribe to Renegade Report and join us every Wednesday. And shoot, if you can't make it, obviously watch the replay. But the best is to be able to make it live so you can interact with us, leave your comments and questions, and we talk Florida State football, and it's only going to get more fun from here on out now.
Absolutely.
So
We'll be at home next week, so
yep, Southern
we'll
Miss.
have a lot better setup.
I will tell you, I will tease everybody by saying this, and some people probably aren't familiar with this, but I release a top 25 at the end of each weekend, which obviously it's a different college football weekend. I usually do it first thing on Sunday, but now we've got even a game on Monday night, which is a pretty interesting matchup between Clemson and Duke. And a lot of Florida State fans are going to be doing some scouting.
Absolutely. Both those teams on the
tomorrow
schedule
night
this year.
Because I'm not predicting a Duke win, but at the same time, it's not a team that I think they can take lightly on the road. It could be interesting. It could be interesting. Duke
I'll tell you, TCU, I believe they only brought back like 18% of their production or something. But the way they looked with Kendall Briles, who's no slouch, we've all got our opinions. My opinion of him has kind of gone down over the past couple of years. But if how TCU looked is any indication of how improved Clemson's offense is going to be, yeah, it should be pretty interesting. And that matchup here in a month or 3 weeks is going to be pretty darn good.
Exactly. So I only mention that because at the end of each weekend I do a top 25, but obviously I got to wait till Tuesday morning until the Clemson Duke game.
You're gonna make me wait.
The way I rank teams, if anybody's familiar with the way I rank teams, you should know who I'm going to rank number one this weekend. That's all I'm going to say. You're going to have to wait until he comes out. But if you understand that I strictly go by what's on the field, and the only thing we've seen on the field is one game, who has the best win in the country? So you know who I'm going to rank number one.
No doubt, man. I'll tell you what, you're not alone in that. I'm not going to say any names. I don't want to get any names wrong, but I saw a lot of media people out there on Twitter and different sites talking about that Florida State, especially in the half, Florida State and LSU looked like the two best teams they'd seen all year. Really, nobody has came out there and looked great, if you will. It's been kind of mediocre performances against, garbage time teams, whatever you want to call it, FCS teams, or really close games that came down to the end where there was really not too much separation. Like that TCU game with Colorado, that was an absolutely great game, but it was pretty sloppy in between.
Yeah, those teams aren't going to be in the mix. It was a fun game to watch.
Absolutely.
We're not going to know about Ohio State for another 3 weeks. They play Notre Dame in 3 weeks. They didn't look impressive yesterday, but they still only gave up 3 points. But anyway, so Ohio State, Notre Dame in 3 weeks. Georgia's got South Carolina Saturday. South Carolina didn't look good. And I tell you, the ACC between Florida State and North Carolina played defense better than they've played defense in years in that game.
In a long time. When they got Gene Chizik, I was really expecting an improvement, and it kind of didn't happen. But boy, did they make that jump. Florida State fans know all about linebacker Amari Gaynor. He was at Florida State for about 4 years. Great guy, great player. He just, with the 4-2-5 defense we run, he's not a Deloach. He's not that middle of the field guy who's going to play coverage. He's really great off the edge in that kind of jack role. And we just didn't have, he just didn't quite fit. He wasn't that guy for us, but a lot of us talked about it when he went to North Carolina. It was a great choice. And, man, he had a great game. He ended up with 2 sacks. And like you said, that front seven is like, are we really watching North Carolina here? Because South Carolina is no slouch. Like, they've got big tight ends. It's an SEC line there. And they played a lot of teams tough. Ended up beating Clemson. They beat Clemson, and who else? They beat another good team there late.
Tennessee.
That's right. They beat Tennessee and Clemson there.
And they played a great game against Notre Dame in the Gator Bowl. They lost by a touchdown. Yeah, the ACC right now is the 2 best wins in the country.
No doubt, no doubt. Let's see if we can keep it rolling. If Duke, is kind of the team that we're thinking, if they can, if either Duke is what we think they are and they have a great game with Clemson, or Clemson comes out and destroys them and proves they're going to be, a playoff contender this year as opposed to last year. Either way you slice it, it's looking really good for the ACC to have three legitimate teams. I'm not going to call UNC a playoff contender just yet because it was one game.
Yeah.
We'll look at it, but man, with Drake May, and if that defense continues to play like that, they're going to be a threat for sure, especially in the ACC.
Yeah, and not to go off on UNC, but they don't play anybody great coming up, but they actually have three more decent teams to play that's going to show a lot. They got App State, they've got Minnesota, they got Pitt.
Oh man,
So their
yeah,
next
that's like
three
three
games are
track
pretty
games.
tough games.
Those are three teams like you're not going to get a ton of credit for beating, but those are three teams you do not want to play,
Yeah, you
especially
put
coming
those
off
three
a high.
together with South Carolina, it's got to be the toughest first four games for just almost anybody in the country.
Yeah, no doubt, no doubt. We have our September is as tough as anybody. It's bookended with LSU and Clemson, but we also have our two cupcakes in between them. We got, well, I don't know. I'm not going to call Boston College a cupcake just yet, but they've been pretty rough the past few years. I really like Jeff Hathley, but he's struggled changing from that Steve Adazio, 3 yards in a cloud of dust to his offense. He's had a hard time getting it switched over. So we'll see how they look this year.
All right, folks.
Yes, Kareem, FSU owns LSU in Florida. That's 3-0 for anybody that's counting for the past 2 years so far.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is. All right, George. Well, unless there's anything else you wanted to hit on, or if there's any other interesting comments or questions in the chat, we can certainly stick around. But otherwise,
No, man, I think we hit all the good points. Noel Nation, just let's celebrate this thing. The team's going to get back to practice and continue getting better. We got 2 weeks to take care of business and get ready for that showdown in Death Valley. It's going to be a lot of fun. These guys, Chris and James, they're going to do their tailgate. If you want to make the trip to Clemson, come see us. They're going to have the tailgate going on. We're going to be there next week at Florida State. Same thing. Just thanks for joining us. And Wednesday, be sure to catch us also Wednesday with the Voice of College Football live show.
when do you think you're going to post your next video?
We are going to do an episode Monday night.
Okay.
Monday night, we're
There
going
you
to
go, everyone. Renegade Report Monday night. They're going to drop a video on Monday night on Renegade Report. And again, like George says, back here on Wednesday, 6 Eastern. And then FSU Southern Miss. Is that a day game? Is that a noon game?
I'm not sure if they've announced the time
Okay.
just yet. I'm hoping it's going to be at least 3 o'clock because that will be a miserable game at noon in Tallahassee next week.
Yeah.
If it is. It was hot, Mark. I know you know it's hot. Lord have mercy. It was hot out here today.
All right,
Certainly
George. We
glad for a
appreciate
nice one.
you. Thanks so much for doing this.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mark.
Congratulations.
Go Knowles.